Alright, so we're checking out a new radio from Radiomaster. It's called the Pocket, and as the name implies, it's very small and portable, lightweight, and I think I'm going to be using this as my daily driver for the foreseeable future. I have been using the Zorro, of course, from Radiomaster for quite some time. I had the original, and then I switched to this, I guess they call this the Max version, and I'll explain why I'm going to switch. Mainly because I tend to prefer smaller and lighter transmitters when possible. I do fly a lot of DJI 03, and I have been flying the remote controller 2 for a lot of quads that don't come with any receivers. So, just a little note here on these tiny radios and small gimbals. There's a fair amount of people in the community that absolutely hate small radios, and that's fine. It's not for them. I absolutely hate large radios. I used to buy into, when I first started into the RC hobby years ago. There weren't a lot of small radios around back then. They were all gigantic tanks and behemoths, and you had to wear a neck strap to be able to hold them. And even when you did, the weight and the size of them tended to hurt my hands. And, I bought into the whole dogma that the large transmitters were the best. And quite frankly, after years of following that sort of principle, I learned that it wasn't the best for me. So if you're just starting out in the hobby, considering what kind of radio you get, you're going to probably hear a lot of people that have been around for a long time. I call them dinosaurs. They've been, they started off on radios in the 70s that were absolutely gigantic, and of course they're going to love those because that's what they grew up on. That's the only thing they've known their entire lives. But at the end, those large radios aren't for me, and so when you're considering what you need to buy for yourself, you really should try out some small radios and see if you prefer those over the big ones. You might be surprised that the smaller ones are actually better. So the Pocket comes in a few different versions. So there's this charcoal color, and then there's a transparent opaque clear color for the case. And then there's alternative cases you can swap out if you don't like these colors. I think there's like orange, blue, pink, green, I believe, are the 4 additional colors that are available. So you could take this apart and swap all the components into those and get a totally different color. There's two different versions of the internal radio. There's the Express ELRS version, which is what I have here, up to 250 milliwatts on that internal radio, or you can get the CC2500 multi-protocol version, which is actually not really multi-protocol because it's a single protocol. The CC2500, basically it's a variant of the FreeSky chip, and so that's rather limiting in terms of what you can do with it, so I obviously opted to go for the Express ELRS version. This does have Hall sensor gimbals. Of course, these are the smaller type of, to fit the size of the radio. Pretty nice layout here. It's a little hard to see, but you have their 4 buttons here: return or back, page forward, page back, and then you have the telemetry button, system button, model button, and they all have very nice feel. You have your trim buttons here, and these work pretty well, and then you have your scroll wheel. The sticks are removable, by the way, so you can take these off, and then they store into the back here, and so then you don't need any sort of gimbal protectors once you take the sticks off. And obviously that makes this very transportable, and the antenna does fold down like so, and it rotates, so you can twist it this way. This is similar to the way the antenna on the Tango works. This is 2.4 gigahertz. I'm not sure why the antenna is so huge. It shouldn't need to be, so maybe later on they'll make a smaller version. You have, I think, the right number of switches here. So you have a latching switch over here on this side and one over here on this side. And then you have a 3-position switch here on these 2. And then you have a momentary switch over here. That's SE. And then you have a dial over here. So kind of a bare minimum number of switches here for most of you drone pilots. This is probably going to be plenty. And they do light up. I'll show this here when I turn it on. You have your DSC port here, so like a trainer port, USB connection here, so USB-C. And this one on top is for You can use that to access the micro SD card. Also, you can do firmware updates to this port, and you can also use this as a USB joystick. And then the ports on the bottom, you have I think this is an audio jack for this speaker, and that's where the speaker is here. Another USB-C port here. This is for charging the battery, and this is a Quick Charge 3.0 compatible. And then you have a micro SD card, and this was included. Yeah, so it's a 256 gigabyte class 4. So on the back here, you can take these covers off on both sides, and on the inside here, you can put in some 18650 lithium-ion cells, and so this is I think an advantage over the Zorro, which has this smaller 18350 size, which has actually less power on time. And then you have this little cover here, also like the Zorro. It's a nano module bay, and so you can use that to attach your external modules. Yeah, this one is a Radiomaster Ranger module, the nano module that has Express ELRS on it. Also, all of the gimbals are adjustable in terms of their tension, and you can switch the mode from mode 1 to mode 2. You have to take the covers off, and then there are some little screws you have to go in and use an Allen wrench to either tighten or loosen. So basically tighten is clockwise and loosen is counterclockwise. And basically you can adjust the tension of the spring left, right, up, and down. And on the throttle you can do on the side left and right. Now, I did loosen mine pretty much the whole way. Out of the box, the default spring tension is pretty stiff. I like my sticks to be super loose. This is my particular preference. So while it is adjustable, it is pretty stiff. I may look into possibly switching out the springs for something else a little bit softer. And I've been told that they may include a set of softer springs with this after it goes into production. Although I think the first batch probably won't have that. I believe the Zorro came with an extra set of springs, if I'm not mistaken. So I may use the ones from that on this one here, because I do like this radio a lot. I just feel like the factory springs are just a bit too stiff for my particular taste, but of course it's very subjective. Go ahead and turn this on. So we have EdgeTX on here. It's dated May 29th, which I believe is the latest 2.8.4, the latest release. I believe there's a newer beta version of that, but that's obviously not on here. Yeah, the screen here is super bright, and I actually had to turn the screen brightness down because it was actually way too bright. And then you have this nice green LED here for the power indicating it's on. When you charge it, it turns red, and then when the batteries are full, it turns off. Then you have these latching switches, which have the LEDs to indicate that they're latched or activated. These 3-position switches don't have any lights, so that you can't tell if they're activated or not. Just these latching switches here, and there's no lights for the stuff in the back, just these here. So I've used this switch over here for arming, and that tells me, oh, the switch is armed. And so that's just a little indicator, a little visual indicator. The screen here is similar, I think almost the same size as the one that came on the T-Lite. I think that it's a little bit bigger than the one on the T-Lite. And then, again, this is another small radio that I used for quite a long time. You know what? I'll do a little quick comparison of all of the ones that I've been showing here to this one and why I'm switching. So one of the big advantages of this one is that you have huge amounts of battery life. So depending on the power level of the Express ELRS transmitter, I believe it goes from about 7 hours to 250 milliwatts, which is the max power. And if you lower the power to 100 milliwatts or 50 milliwatts, of course, you're going to get even more power on time. So you're talking 10 hours or more, which is way more than any of the other radios that I've used here. So one of the things about the T-Lite is that it has one 18650 cell and a lot of limitations. Ergonomically, it was a good radio for me. I liked it. It was pretty decent and nice and lightweight. Had a lot of issues with the external module, of course. Had a lot of negatives for this. One of these early ultralight compact radios. So now, you know, when you go to like something like the Zorro, you have two 18-350 cells, so you get a little bit more power on time, but still not as much as the Pocket. And then I did use this is the Beta PV, gosh, I forgot the name of this one. It's got Express ELRS, it's got a 250 milliwatt internal module, plus it's got a nano module bay here for it, and I put a multi-protocol module in here. It's super compact. This is one of the smallest radios out there, and it has Hall sensor gimbals as well, just like the Pocket. This is really nice and loose. This is actually one of my favorite gimbals, surprisingly. I can't tell you exactly why. It works really well. It's very accurate, and it hasn't had any issues. I know that their potentiometer gimbals from like a couple years ago were pretty bad. These have actually lasted a long time, more than a year. But the big problem with this one, it has one cell, like a little tiny 1000 milliamp hour battery, like a LiPo inside here. Of course, it keeps it nice and lightweight, but I can pretty much just use this for maybe about 10 flights, and then I got to charge it up again. So it just charges up via USB-C, and it's slow charging, so it does take a while for this to fully charge. One of the big drawbacks of this particular one, but for Express ELRS, it was a pretty good one, but when I wanted to do more longer flight sessions, I went with the Zorro. Much more flights available with the two cells, but you know, of course, this is a lot heavier setup. This with the module and everything is just way more heavy. I'll actually put this all on the scale here a little bit, and then you know these AG01 mini gimbals are just stellar. Probably some of the best gimbals ever made, especially for a tiny radio, but these fortunately aren't in the Pocket. Maybe they'll make a version like that with the CNC, you know, for the Pocket later. I'm sure they're already, and I can imagining they're already making a Pocket Max version. Probably it's going to come out in 6 months. That's typically what their product life cycle is like. Then I also use the DJI, the remote controller 2. I think it has lithium-ion cells inside here. I'm not exactly sure. I never took it apart. But the battery life from this one is like crazy. I can probably do like 30, 40 flights, about 4 or 5 minutes, and don't have to charge it up again, because this thing has extremely long battery life and a really good range. DJI-03 works really well, but this is a little bit heavier than the Pocket, so this is probably why I'll be switching over to this, for at least for the models that I fly that have Express ELRS. And that's sort of the disadvantage of using an Express ELRS radio, is that you have to put an Express ELRS receiver on every drone. Whereas if you primarily fly DJI-03, the receiver's built into the 03 air unit, so you don't have to buy any extra receivers or hardware. You just bind up to your remote controller 2 and off you go. So it also makes it a little bit lightweight. And granted, it's only like a gram or two, but you know, on some of these lightweight builds, every gram counts. All right, so I just want to show you how much all of these weigh. And so this is the Pocket, 385-ish grams. Pretty light, especially considering it has two 18-650 cells in there. Here's the T-Lite, 289 grams. This is one of the lighter ones, but there's no module on that one. And then I'll take these little gimbal protectors off of the BFP radio. This one does have a multi-protocol module in the back here, but this is how I've been flying it. And 298 grams. Again, very light, but very limited in battery life. And then here's the remote controller 2, 424 grams. So yeah, you know, this is a little bit heavier than the Pocket. So this is why I'm kind of, probably for those models I get that don't come with any receivers on, and just, you know, that fly, when I fly the 03 area, I'm going to be sticking to that. And then this is the Zorro Max with the Ranger Nano module in the back here. And I also use this one for when I have longer flight sessions, but now we're, you know, this is 478 grams. So, you know, it's 478 grams versus, the Pocket was 385 grams. So this one's almost 100 grams lighter. Granted, it has an extra module in the back there, but if I want to put the this little multi-protocol. This is the multi-protocol module that's on the BFPV. I can easily put this on the back here. That doesn't weigh a whole lot, but this module is about 29 grams. So one other little negative that I want to mention, other than the spring tension, of course, again, that's a subjective thing, is that the stick ends are really, really sharp. So this, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get the camera to show this, but you can see how the pointy ends are really big here and they're super sharp. And I'm going to probably file these down with a metal file because they're just too sharp for me. Maybe they'll come with some alternative sticks later, I don't know. But if you look at the stick ends on the AG01 gimbal here, yes, they are also pretty sharp, but they're smaller and so they're more tightly spaced, so you don't really feel it when you're moving the stick around. It just helps with the grip. So kind of hoping they would come up with a stick end kind of like more like this. This stick end is actually kind of hurts when you use it. I have some calloused thumbs here, so you know it's not too bad, but yeah, I notice it when I sometimes press down a little bit harder. I'm like, oh, that kind of hurts a little bit. So yeah, I'm gonna file those down. That's kind of comes with that. This is obviously just a factory stick end, but I'm sure there's probably going to be some alternative stick ends out there. I'm sure there's going to probably be some 3D printed parts out there for this that can, come up with some alternative stick ends. But yeah, it's pretty sharp. So in terms of how this would be for a pincher, honestly, I don't pinch, so I'm not the best person to talk about that. I think that this radio is going to be interesting in terms of how you're going to be able to hold it. I imagine a pincher is probably going to want to sort of cradle the radio like this and then use it like that. But again, I don't pinch, so I'm not really going to talk about that too much. I'm sure it's totally possible. It seems like it wouldn't be any problem. And of course, it's very light. You can hold it in your hand, no problem. Of course, you can put a neck strap on if you want, but I believe this part here is plastic, not metal. But, again, it's not super heavy, so the plastic should be okay in the long run, I think. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it for this video on the Pocket. Honestly, as I said, I've been using a lot of these small radios for a long time now, and this is, I think, the next step, the evolution in these sort of smaller radios. Better battery life, just overall better ergonomics. I like the way the switches work. The gimbals are great. Overall, just like I said, there's a couple negatives that I mentioned. The spring tension, again, a little bit too stiff for me, and then the stick ends are really sharp. Other than that, I don't have too much to complain about this one, and this is going to be one of my daily driver radios for the foreseeable future, so you'll probably see this in a lot of future videos. But yeah, if you got any questions, let me know in the comments below, and there'll be a link, of course, down in the video description if you guys want to pick one of these up. Highly recommend this radio if you're into small radios and you definitely want a lot more power on time with these bigger batteries. So they, by the way, they did mention, I forgot to mention, they did provide these 18650 batteries for me, but they are not included in the radio, in the price of the radio. But of course you can buy them from their store, the Radiomaster branded 18650 cells. So you can pick those up from them, or you can pretty much use any button top 18650s. So you can pick those up from Amazon or anywhere else, or you can buy them from Radiomaster, and I'll link those down in the video description, but those are not included. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully it's helpful in terms of making your decision. If you like the video, please give this video a thumbs up, and if you want more content like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps the channel out. That'll do it for this video. Talk to you guys in the next one.